I think I can start now. Yeah, so welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the UN Trilateral Independent Dialogue Shift Towards Healthy and Sustainable Consumption Patterns. I'm Alessandra Picella, and I'm in charge of the Science and Technology Office of the Embassy of Switzerland in Seoul, South Korea, and part of the Swiss Next Network. Here with me, although in a 12-hour far time zone, Leonardo Machado, who is CEO ad interim of Swiss Next in Brazil, and all our teams that you will have the opportunity to meet also during our breakout sessions. I'm sure that many of you are wondering what this Swiss Next is. Our headquarters is in Switzerland under the State Secretariat of Education, Research and Innovation. And it is the Swiss Global Knowledge Network, consisting in about 26 locations all around the world, connecting the dots in education, research and innovation. Our big international team supports the outreach and active engagement of our partners in the international exchange of knowledge, ideas, and talents. And in order to do so, we use various platforms. A dialogue like this one is an example. And as a connectors among cultures and dialogue facilitators, this year we are using the challenge of the pandemic to explore the opportunity, I will say the unique opportunity, to work not only across borders, but also across continents. This dialogue naturally follows a first cross-continent exchange with special focus on food tech and digitalization, which we organized together, South Korea and Brazil, in last November. Yeah, it was last November. Today, we want to explore the paths to more sustainable consumption with special attention to current national and cross-border initiatives, which will be the mission of the first session, the role of technology to drive innovation, and the cooperative approach among sectors in the second. The two sessions will be moderated by two fantastic experts. Is it true, Leonardo?
Yes, Alessandra, thank you. Thank you not only to fantastic moderators, but also fantastic speakers that we have today, also entrepreneurs, and with very innovative solutions in the food systems sector. And on behalf of Swiss Next Brazil and the Swiss Next Network, I'm very happy to welcome you all. And I hope you join this event, you can participate in this event, you can share and exchange your views and insights with us. I'm going to share with you some technical details about this event. It's a two-part event, as Alessandra said. We're going to have two different sessions, and between those two sessions, we are going to have a networking session. So during those networking sessions, the idea is to exchange, is to know new people. Unfortunately, during this pandemic, but fortunately, in other ways, we are able to connect with people from all over the world. But we want to keep this, what makes the Swiss Next Network events very special. It is meeting new people and connecting to new people. So feel free to introduce yourself and to talk about the topics. And I just would like to tell you that when you leave a breakout room, if you want to change, if you want to switch between breakout rooms during the networking session, please don't leave the event, leave only the room you are in. So just pay attention to select the right button so that you do not leave the event. I also would like to ask you that during the sessions, please let your microphone off. But of course, during the networking sessions and also during the question and answer moment of the sessions, keep your mic in. And of course, we want to see you. We like to see you. And if you can keep your camera on, we're going to be very happy to see you as well. You can raise hands if you have any questions during the sessions, during the presentations, so that the moderators can get and take notes on your questions for the speakers. And you can also ask your questions when the mic is open for you, when the floor is open for you, in Korean or in Portuguese, because we are going to have simultaneous translation for this event. So if you're not comfortable in speaking in English, you can make your question, make your comment, and share your insight in Portuguese or in Korean. And I think that's it. We also want to hear you. So during the event, we are going to share and show you some polls to hear you and to get some information about different topics in different moments of the session. So I wish you an excellent session. And I also have to present our moderators. We have here for the first part of this event, Christina Sen Jacobsen. She is managing director at the Swiss Food and Nutrition Valley. She holds a master's in food science and technology from the University of Copenhagen and a master's in European food studies from the Wageningen University. She worked for 12 years at Mondelez, involved in research and development, innovation, market, and strategy. For the past years, she worked with startups and entrepreneurs. And in the beginning of these years, she joined the Swiss Food and Nutrition Valley based in Switzerland. Thank you very much, Cristina. And for the second session, we have Gustavo Porpino based in Brazil. He's a food marketing specialist, consumer behavior researcher, and a communications expert. And he holds a PhD in marketing from the Getúlio Vargas Foundation in Brazil. Gustavo works for Embrapa, which is the Brazilian Agricultural Research Corporation since 2006. And he is also a collaborator on initiatives from the United Nations Environmental Program and the Food and Agriculture Organization about healthy and sustainable consumption. Cristina is going to moderate the first session. She has studied and worked in 14 different countries, and she says she has a special devotion to the ocean, and Gustavo is based, and he has grown up, if I'm not mistaken, in Natal, which is a city in Brazil, and he's based for work in the state of Alagoas, home of amazing beaches. So Cristina, if you can express your devotion for the ocean on those two cities, I can just recommend you just amazing beaches. So Cristina, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Leonardo. And speaking of networking, I definitely need to get a closer network with those beaches. So it's my great honor and pleasure to moderate the first panel. Just some ingoing thoughts before we start. And here comes a quote. The key to community is acceptance, in fact, the celebration of our individual and cultural differences. It is also the key to world peace. Now, this was said by an American psychiatrist, Morgan Scott Peck. And that's what I think is amazing about the session we have before us, and actually the whole session here, is that we're now gonna share and really make a community and understand what's happening out there with the intention of, pretty much solving world peace. I think he was ahead of his time when he said these words. And today, it's really a matter of the planetary boundaries have been reached. The outlook looks grim. We need to accept, collaborate, and make a change. So with the three individual speakers we will have now, they will each speak for, present something, and then we'll have an open panel. And following also you, the audience, will have an opportunity to ask questions on the different topics. So together we will now travel 3 continents. We will start in South America and then go to Europe and finish off in Asia. Our first speaker, Renato Sergio Jamil Malouf, is the coordinator of the Brazilian Research Network on Food and Nutritional Sovereignty and Security. Renato, I am looking forward to hearing your presentation, and I hope our audience will enjoy it too.
Renato,
Yes.
you can share your screen now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Christine. Thank you to organizers for the opportunity of sharing some ideas with you. Could you see my PPT, my presentation? Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
see.
In this presentation, I will propose some elements, aspects, or dimensions, some more general elements that I think should be taken into account in order to assess the possibility of shifting to more sustainable and healthy consumption patterns in terms of food. And the title explain this, it's just transitions towards sustainable and healthy food system, a multi-scale approach. And I will start by asserting that we need, first of all, a systemic approach, which should be a multi-scale approach in order to assess food systems. Food systems has to do not only with flows of interdependence, but also involves complementarities, conflicts, coordination, and imbalances between actors and politics. And my point is, we need a multi-scale approach to food systems. What does this mean? It means that we have the coexistence of systems with different amplitudes, actors, and dynamics. In some aspects, we can say that we've got an international food system. We're talking about global value chains, transnational corporations, international trade. In other aspects, we could say that we have national food systems, especially when we deal with assessing food provisioning, public policy, etc. And we have also this subnational food system, being them local or territorial, where elements of small-scale production, biodiversity, culture, fresh food, etc., are considered. The coexistence of food systems is important in order to analyze food and eating in localities, and having the food and eating localities as the entry point, which takes us to the question of to dealing with food provisioning. And when you look, taking the localities as an entry point, what you're going to see is first the overlapping of flows with various amplitudes. Having large retail agents is an important agent that offer goods with distinct characters in terms of origin, processing, eating habits, etc. Secondly, we have the competition for social control of foods provisioning, represented mainly by the alternative food networks, which requires considering food politics involved in eating. As for consumption in consumers, the reality is that consumers or the consumption patterns used to combine preference. We are gonna find some hybridism in both the purchase and the very plates of people. And finally, it's important to consider the social differentiation among models of agriculture production, especially the contrast between family farming and the so-called agribusiness sectors, where we're going to see where we're going to have the main conflicts around food systems in terms of land, natures, resource, etc. So this is for the multi-scale approach. The second point is has access to sustainable health food. Three questions. First, what food should be sustainable? I think it's clear we have limits of making more sustainable the prevalent patterns of food production and consumption, especially when you consider that it comes from large-scale monocultures and livestock, land concentration, compromising biodiversity, pollution, greenhouse gases emission, and in the end, we have this kind of monotonous and poor diets with lots of ultra-processed food and the corresponding overweight and obesity as main features of health problems related with food. So the question is, the sustainability should be the sustainability of adequate and healthy food. Second point, for whom? We know that we have constraints to access due to social inequalities and poverty. This second aspect is that the food system is being able to offer cheaper but bad food. And the reality is that people has to pay more for eating better. So that posed the question of the affordability and accessibility of to adequate and healthy food. And third, the need to promote, protect, and give support to small scale and diversified family farming. And the third question is how to promote. First, the experience shows that it's central the role of having integrated and especially participatory policies. For accessing food system, we have to have a triple interconnected focuses. We have to focus on hunger and famine and malnutrition as outcomes of highly productive food chains. Secondly, overconsumption, health disease, losses, and waste. And thirdly, the environmental damage related to this food system, the prevalent food system. And this leads me to deal with the Brazilian case, where we're going to find a sort of Brazilian paradox. Brazil is one of the world's largest food producers, exporter, with increasing food insecurity and hunger in the country. With this, as a result, an outcome of this combination of economic crisis, policy dismantling, and the pandemic. Our research network just finished a national inquiry using the Brazilian scale of food insecurity. And the result is that in 2020, we found out that less than half of Brazilian households could be considered in food security. But important to see that until 2013, the country was following a trend, a virtuous trend that allows us to reach more than 77% of households in food security, and then we have a reversal of the tendency from 2014 onwards. And as I said, the combination of economic crisis, political crisis, and the pandemic. So, and all the forms of food insecurity have been increasing. So the pandemic has worsened the situation, but the reversal of trends started before the pandemic. And finally, I think that my time is just finishing. I would like just to mention the third point that has to do with transitions to food system. First, we need a processual approach. We are used to have this sort of model, formal mechanistic model saying we are in this situation, we want to go to that other situation, and nobody talks about the process for getting there. Secondly, we have to include the reference to justice in order to talk to just transitions, and the notion of food justice is important, which means promoting social justice through food. My research group is involved with the international project called exactly Just Food Project with Swiss colleagues, and we have. I will give one word on food loss and waste, but I think it's not important. Just to say that it's not possible to discuss food losses and waste without connecting this with the prevailing food production and consumption part. As for cross-border issues, I think it's a cross-border issue questioning the dominant patterns of food production and consumption. This is an international tax. It's not only a national tax. We have to share experience in public policies. We have to enhance cooperation, including non-government, and we have to discuss also the place and roles of international organizations, as this is an initiative from the UN.
Good.
And
so we will get it again.
The Brazilian campaign on real food, just for the discussion. Thank you. Sorry for passing that over.
No, all good, and thank you so much. And I think we will have a chance in the whole Q&A session to dive deeper into the whole Brazilian paradox and how we can learn from that cross-border and make sure we don't get into that situation elsewhere. Thank you very much, Renato. You can stop sharing your screen, and then we will go from Brazil over to the same country that I'm in, namely Switzerland, to more specifically Zurich, where Braida, who is the project manager at the ETA's Competency Center World Food System, will share with us some insights and a specific project. Brida, please share your presentation and enlighten us.
Thank you very much, Christina. Also from my side, very warm welcome.
Brida, you need to change the presentation modus. I think it's in the
presentation modus.
In the top left corner. You need to, if you go to the top left,
Yeah.
up.
Second. Yes.
No, yeah. If you present here, go present again.
Yes.
And now on this display up there, yeah, you press that one exactly.
Okay.
Now it
work.
Thank you.
I tried this before and it worked. Now it doesn't. Well, always the same. Anyway, sorry for this. So very warm welcome to the presentation of the Future Food Initiative, a Swiss research initiative that is co-managed by us, the World Food Systems Center at ETH Zurich, and the Nutrition Center at EPFL. So the Future Food Initiative was launched by ETH Zurich and EPFL together with the Swiss industry partners Bühler, Givaudan and Nestlé as the first on board. However, there is the possibility for other industry partners to join in future. The initiative was really established to expand research and education in the area of food and nutrition science. It aims to bridge competences from academic and industrial research in Switzerland to really develop solutions that unlock the power of healthy, nutritious, sustainable, and affordable food. As I said, the Future Food Initiative catalyzes some key partners in the Swiss food system to create an environment which allow to address in a collaborative way, to address jointly some of the great challenges that the food system faces. Switzerland offers quite a unique ecosystem for this. There is a very strong research-oriented industrial sector, but also a very innovative startup scene. And of course, the two world-leading universities, EPFL and ETH Zurich. And then one big part of this initiative is the Future Food Fellowship that is structured around annual calls for proposals of young researchers that propose projects on future food issues such as nutrition, production, and health. It is a postdoctoral program, it funds postdoctoral projects for 3 years, providing them with 390,000 Swiss francs in form of a research fund to really enable these persons to work on their own projects and collaborate with Swiss industry. The fellows, they're all employed at either ETH Zurich or EPFL, where they do have a host professor that supports them and in which group that they can really conduct their research. The aim of the initiative is really to attract leading scientists to affect a large segment of the consumer market and accelerate the realization of novel industrial processes or new products, solve ecologically important issues, or improve the quality of human life and health. The initiative also wants to attract global talent and support innovative projects to really create a critical mass of competence and research around food in Switzerland. So far, we have had 2 calls for proposals and currently have 7 7 postdoctoral fellows that work on their projects, 4 from the call 2019 and 3 from the call 2020. The topics that they work with are very diverse. So we have one person, Marianne, working at enhancing the use and conservation of agrobiodiversity through diversified farming systems, research that she's mainly doing in Mexico, currently also looking at the impact of COVID-19 on agrobiodiversity of small scale farmers. Then we have Chunyan Wu that is looking at how natural compounds could be used to prevent obesity. So really screening different compounds, natural compounds, to find something that would help to solve this problem. Joan, she's working on exploring the potential of the ancient Philippine crop, kabok millet, that is indeed very underutilized crop, but shows a really big potential. One example is that the crop is, for example, gluten-free, and of course has the ability to be able to diversify a farming system. Nilufar, she is working on a more techy project. So she is working with sensors, namely carbon nanotubes, that could be integrated into the packaging with the aim to reduce food waste. So the sensor is kind of telling how the product inside is doing, and could really help to intervene before the product would go bad. Last year, three more persons joined us. Most of them have just started their projects, and there we have Hannah that is working on trying to reduce the astringent perception and improve the sensory quality of plant-based beverages. Eva is looking at the beneficial impact of food and exercise-derived lactate on muscular health, really aiming at finding or seeing the effect of this lactate on muscle performance, so for sportive people, but also in order to ensure a healthy aging. So it could potentially also have an effect on muscular health when one is aging. And Georg, last but not least, he is looking at the gut microbiome and is investigating if microbes, or how microbes transform raw food constituents to healthy metabolites. So yeah, how the microbiome is processing the food we eat, and what can be done that the constitutes could be, that we could have more healthy metabolites in the end. Currently, we're in the middle of the process of the third call. We will have the interviews with the candidates very soon. And so far, we plan to communicate this year's decision end of June. The topics of this call, of this year's call, were plant-based nutrition, but not only looking at proteins, but really go beyond. And again, looking at the microbiome, climate change mitigation is really a topic of priority, healthful nutrition for low-income populations, and sustainable processes and food design. And with this, I'm at the end of my presentation, and yeah, happy to answer questions if some still occur.
Thank you very much, Brida. I'm sure there are a lot of questions about the whole Future Food Fellowship and the success that you're having and what comes after this program. But before we go into that, I am happy to present our final speaker. We will take off from Zurich and go to Asia, to South Korea, where Yoon-Suk who is Government Partnership Officer of the World Food Program Korea office, meaning he's a good guy who sends a lot of rice out to a lot of places in this world where they are hungry and in need. Yoon-suk, please tell us a bit more about what you do.
Let me turn on my microphone. Thank you very much, Krishna. Okay, let me share the screen. Okay.
Perfect.
All right, great. Okay. Oh, it's a great honor to join this important event and deliver WFP message here. So I'd like to introduce the WFP Korea's initiative, Zero Waste, Zero Hunger campaign. So, just a second. Okay. WFP is the largest humanitarian organization fighting hunger. And COVID-19 pandemic becomes hunger pandemic, and then the population in the acute hunger is now double than before the pandemic. So WFP highlights that food produced every year globally is enough to feed all people, but 1/3 of food is wasted. Also, food waste generates a lot of greenhouse gas emission. So to solve the problem, WFP has taken action in 2 ways. In developing countries, we train farmers and modernize the storage facility to reduce the post-harvest loss. Along with that, WFP enhanced the farmers' the market power by providing them with the price info and then connected them to market through cooperatives. In the industrialized countries, we globally run the campaign Stop the Waste. The campaign gives a message to reduce food waste and as well as tips on how to reduce food waste in everyday life. WFP Korea office went one step further, and then we launched the Zero Waste Zero Hunger campaign. The basic concept is providing a smaller size dish with a bit discounted price, and then people can participate in action for zero hunger by just doing zero food waste. So individuals eat healthily and stay fit. The restaurants can save cost on food waste. Of course, the less waste will reduce greenhouse gas emission, and people can help others in hunger just by eating their dishes and leaving no food waste. So WFP Korea office has a support group of lawmakers called Zero Hunger Leaders. So about 6 months ago, we hosted a Zero Waste Zero Hunger seminar with them. And at the event, 8th UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon delivered his keynote speech, and many influencers were present at the event and supported the campaign. That was like an event to announce the official start of the campaign. So, okay, the campaign has 4 models. The first one is Zero Hunger Restaurant. The Zero Hunger Restaurant serves a Zero Hunger menu, which is a smaller portion than the normal dish. As the portion is small, the cost of the ingredients is lower than the original, and the people do not leave food waste. From those 2, the restaurant can have done some cost saving, and part of the saved cost is donated to the WFP for Zero Hunger. This concept makes a direct link between reducing food waste and Zero Hunger. So we designed the Zero Hunger mark, and the people can recognize the Zero Hunger restaurant. Also, Chef Tony Yu is a celebrity chef in Korea, and his Michelin restaurant is the first Zero Waste Zero Hunger restaurant now. It has been just 1 month now, but Chef Yu informed that they could reduce like 20 to 30 liters of food waste every week, because everybody, including cooks and customers, concerns about the food waste. The second model is the campaign at cafeteria. The first pilot was done with CJ Freshway. CJ Group is Korea-based global food company, and then CJ Freshway runs a cafeteria and canteen business. In the parlor, people put a ring called give ring on their plates, and the paper give ring help people self-serve only the healthy amount. Our first pilot shows that 27 to 37% of food waste per person can be reduced. The second version of the canteen model is the AI scanner. WFP Korea office did a consulting workshop through Amazon Web Service program, and then we visualized our canteen model and a scanner that can track our food waste. During the workshop, we found Nubilab has already realized our picture, and our office ran a test bed in AT's Canteen First. AT is the state-owned company in Korea. And then Zero Hunger School is another canteen model. We added education to the campaign. So pupils learn about global issues, including food waste and hunger. Then they can take action to participate in the AI solution during their lunchtime. Despite COVID-19, we could conduct a Zero Hunger School pilot at 5 schools across the nation in November 2020. There was a fluctuation, but the pilot period was short, but we could observe great potential to reduce the food waste at school canteens, like by 7 to 30%. And third model is reducing food products at risk of disposal. Republic of Korea has a system called sell by dates. So the product cannot be sold if overdue, so regardless of the quality. So through WFP Korea offices network in government, National Assembly, and various sectors, we are discussing how to improve the system, such as adopting best before date. So we also ran social media challenges. And for the last model is the campaign at home. 70% of the food waste is from home and restaurant. And we have a partnership with Cookcat, which is the Asia #1 food media, and provides good tips to reduce food waste and encourage people to join the campaign. Also, WFP has the app called Share the Meal, which won the award, the App of the Year in 2020. People who wanted to donate to Zero Hunger can do as much as they want with one click on Share the Meal. So people can donate the saved code whenever they want. So it can be a penny, but it is important that individuals donate the saved cost by reducing food waste. The Republic of Korea was a recipient country just 40 years ago, but now WFP is top 11th donor, and it's a shining Zero Hunger model. So WFP Korea office hopes the Zero Waste Zero Hunger campaign can be an innovative global model which contributes to Zero Hunger. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you.
Thank you very much to you, Yonsuk. You may unshare the screen. And with that, we will now have, I have a few questions for you guys, but I would also like to invite the audience to submit their questions. And here, I think, Leonard, they need to write it in the chat. Is that right? Help me.
Yes, they can write in the chat. They also can raise hand. There is a button you can raise your hand to ask a question directly.
So I'll just say, wait with raising the hands, write it down or write it in the chat, because I go first with questions. That's the big honor of being the moderator, that I have this privilege. And Yonsuk, I would actually like to start with you. You're fresh in memory. I mean, hey, congratulations with the work you're doing and being a receiver, coming from being a receiver and now to a very important donor country who is setting an agenda. We need your help in Switzerland. I mean, when it comes to food waste, I think the European average is something like 180 kilos per capita per year. In Switzerland, we're on 320 kilograms per capita. Switzerland, where we look after the world and we are very conscious about everything. What is your advice to a country like Switzerland, where you said it 70% is happening in the household? Where should we start?
Okay. let me say that should be, I did say school. Yes. School is not only about the pupils or students. We expanded our campaign and to their family and their friends. Yeah. And also the most important thing is actually we have to change our culture. This is nonsense that in developing country that there are people still in hunger, but another the advanced or industrialized company, there are a lot of disease because of the too much food, and then we waste a lot. And then I think changing culture can solve the problem. Yeah, that's the starting point can be the schools, I believe.
Right. I think the share the meal, the gamification of actually being aware and, as you say, education about it could be a good start. Renato, I'll just move over to you. A bridging question: how is food waste an issue in Brazil, or how do you go about that? We need, yeah, unmute.
Sorry, Christine, could you say it again? What's the question?
Yeah, I was just bridging over and curious about what is the food waste challenge in Brazil, if you know anything about that.
Well, it's a very important challenge as everywhere. The first challenge to me, at least in Brazil, I cannot talk about these of other countries, is having good indicators. Is having a to precise what lost and waste means, and have good indicators, good and frequent indicators, which we don't have in Brazil. So we don't have, so we have some, but it's not enough.
Yeah.
So
what gets measured gets done. It's probably, I think, even though you say it counts for Brazil, I think you can roll that out worldwide. Shifting over to your talk, I'm so intrigued by this Brazilian paradox, because most of us probably know that there has been incredible financial growth or economic growth in the food industry in Brazil. As you say, you're one of the largest exporter, and yet you're telling us that you have food insecurities that's on the rise. I didn't get the why. Why is that? You're producing more than ever, and yet you're more hungry than ever. Can you tell us why, and what is put in place to do something about it?
Well, to make it short, which is not easy. First, food security is not a matter of producing food. It's a matter of accessing food. And Brazil is one of the most unequal countries in the world. This is first. Secondly, we have to consider the role of the central role of public policies. And what we've been witnessing in Brazil is when we've got during 10, 13 years, good food policies, good integrated programs to deal with hunger and food security, we succeed in increasing the food security, the degree of households in Brazil. After the parliamentary coup in 2016, and also the political crisis that followed this, and especially this actual present government, we don't have anymore. We are passing under what some analysts call a policy dismantling process. So when you don't have public policy, it's easy to go back to previous situation of inequality in the access. And third, perhaps the last point, at least, this question of which food do we want to promote? Because the efficiency of the prevalent food system is to produce bad food. They are cheaper. It's cheaper to have a lunch with one Coca-Cola and one biscuit than to have a plate of meal, of good meal. It's cheaper. So what happened with this good food? This is the question. And in our case, I didn't have time to mention this, but the civil society in Brazil is quite dynamic. And one of the slogans that we have here is real food in the countryside and in the cities. And so I let you with the question, what real food means, what we can call as real food.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very sad that it is that way, that it's much cheaper to fill a bowl of chips and wine gums and chocolate for the kids and make them a nice fruit bowl to eat. And again, here, education is one thing, but affordability is really another paradox we need to crack the code for. Brida, Future Food Fellowship, fairly new initiative, successfully running. I'm trying to understand, yeah, they come in and do their research and whatever. Are you following through with them? I mean, are you ensuring that, so to speak, the innovation gets out of the lab, that these nutritious initiatives around fighting obesity, food waste, growing healthy, sustainable crop, that it actually gets implemented and is a part of making the world better?
So I think, thank you for this question. I think this is a very crucial part of this initiative. And I think already the setup of it was done in a way to promote exactly that application. So we have the research that is done at universities, but then we do have the industry partners, right, that we want to establish a network that the fellows can be in regular contact and exchange with the industry partners. And through that network and through knowing the right persons in the different industries, that then those persons can take up some results of the project and in certain prototypes. And if obviously the most successful way would be that then if it really gets finds a way in application.
There's the way we talk here and look at cross-border context. You have ensured cross-sector engagement. So it's not just the top universities, ETH and EPFL, but also you have Givaudan and Bühler and other business partner and startups collaboration. I got it. Good. Time is running so fast when things are interesting and fun. Before we hand over to the audience and their questions, I would just make sure that our panelists are fully awake and also the listeners. So I'm going to ask you 3 fast questions, yeah? And please, audience out there, you can play along. You can't win anything, I'm sorry, unless Leonardo wants to send somebody present. But I have a question, and you're not allowed to give a long answer, very short and concise answers. Renato, Yunsuk, and Brida, are you ready?
Yes.
They're very nervous because they ask if they could get the questions in advance and say, no way. Okay. So same question for all of you. Which country do you see as the role model globally when it comes to this shift towards healthy and sustainable consumption behaviors, platforms, and changing that? So which country is doing an amazing job in moving the consumers, the consumption patterns towards health and wellness? Brida, top of mind.
Well, hopefully soon Switzerland with more initiatives or with the help of the Future Food Initiative, for example.
Good, a visionary answer. Yunsuk?
Okay, actually, I think South Korea may not be, because we have a lot of side dishes and also the salty food. But yeah, I think why I don't know why, but I think Switzerland too.
Okay, hopes up for Switzerland. Renato, what do you say?
Oh, difficult question. Difficult to answer. You've got some examples. I've been working a project with Finnish colleagues, and I'm following a quite interesting process of changing diets there in Finland. But as I mentioned in my presentation, to discuss the changing of diets in Finland, you have to discuss the soybean that comes from Brazil to feed their food system. And this is all but sustainable and healthy. So, I mean, you can have one country doing good job in terms of changing, but as we have this international connection between systems, you have to have this sort of integrated initiative.
I find your example with Finland interesting because we know that Finland is one of, if not the top country when it comes to education And it has gone again through all three of you that education plays a role in this. So interesting thought. Somebody's writing Israel in the chat. Yeah, we know Israel is doing an amazing job in unleashing innovation, this one. Good. Next question here. Which food technology or which technology overall will have the most impact with this one as well? You know, are we talking, I actually won't give you any cues, but what do you see as an important technology in moving us towards healthy consumption, feeding the world, and the whole sustainability agenda here? Yunsuk, do you want to start? Top of mind technology.
Okay. Okay. Something the technology, agriculture technology is adjusted to developing country level. I would say that they can keep the sustainable agriculture and sustainable food system, I believe.
Great. That is like the wish for the crystal ball. Ed tech for the developing countries. Renato?
Well, I must confess that I don't believe in technical solutions itself. And this is, for me, this is the risk that this UN summit is current. I mean, they're trying to deal with this as a technical issue. But as for technical issues, I believe in social technical solutions, which means techniques that is connected with social modes of production.
Great. And you kind of know what you're talking about, being a sociologist as well.
Well, I'm talking about small-scale production, food production. For me, the question is how to promote small-scale food production and how to connect this with consumption. You mentioned a lot about school. For me, the most important aspect of this, of dealing with schools, is what we've been doing in Brazil for some time now, is offering free school meals coming from regional production. This is for me, this is the question. So what technical questions this sort of initiative pose? I'm not saying that if some large companies start doing some technical innovation, okay, this is not the model I support, but if they can do less harm, the better. But this is not the solution for me.
Braida, technology?
I think it's not only a question about which technology, but how the technology is applied. And I think the most successful technologies to fix the food system will really be some that don't try to overrule nature, but really work together with it, support a food system that is within the planetary health boundaries. But maybe to still say 2-3 things, I think mainly in countries that consume a lot of meat and so on, I think technologies around meat analogs, precision farming might play an important role. But again, here they have to be used smartly and not just for the sake of technology.
Great. In the audience, Olivier is seconding you, saying plant-based. Jimena is saying agroecology, and Paulo referring to urban farming or urban microfarming. So it seems like we have a lot of work to do, but I think the hope that I said in the beginning, it's looking great, but there's a lot of hope and there's a lot of effort going into initiating things and doing things. So with these different angles to it, it's there as well. Now, I would like to ask the audience to raise your questions to the panel. And as Leonardo said, you can either raise your hand and get a voice, or you can write it into the chat. Good. Anybody?
I have a question on this last topic. Sorry,
go ahead.
Can I go? Okay.
Yes.
So Renato, so just to the last point you're saying about small scale production, and I just wrote in the chat, like, how do you see the technology can be applied in order to connect these small scale productions to a broader consumption? So how can technology not only be on food production level, but also in food access?
Should you answer straight the question?
Yeah, go ahead, Renato. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, the question is, technology has to do with model of production. So the first thing for me is which model of production you're thinking in support. In Brazil, as you probably know, agroecology is an important reference, so it's becoming an important reference, and it poses lots of technical questions, but with a different view of the relation with nature. So this is first, is which model of production you want to support. Secondly, as we are talking about local circuits, local systems or territorial systems, the technology has to be related with adequate and healthy food, adequate in terms of culture, in terms of ecosystems, etc. So this is the second reference to technology. And third, it's not a matter of technology, but it's a question of commercialization, which has to do with access, how to connect the local production, the adapted production with people that has difficult to accessing food. I'm not talking about medium class people that has his car, the car to go to the supermarket. I'm talking about these people that live in the distant areas of metropolitan regions. How could they access really good food instead of going to a small shop where industrial products are offered?
Great, thank you, Renato. Petra, I saw Paulo, you had a question. Go ahead.
Yes, I did.
Diana. Yeah.
Yes. So my question is, what do you people see as the main impediment to solving the world hunger problem? I mean, what do you think is is it culture? Is it resources? What do you see? What's the main challenge?
Which is for the three of us?
Yeah, I think we'll take a round. Brighter, what's the main challenge? What's in our way?
I think inequalities and power structures might be a very important issue here.
Power structures. That's a nice way of saying politics without getting into troubles, isn't it?
All right.
Good. Oh, go ahead, Renato.
No, just my answer is straight. Political will. Every time we've got political will, the problem has been, in a way, solved.
That's what Greta is saying too. So, Jonsuk, what is in the way?
Yeah, okay. I think mainly the conflict, and then also nowadays the climate change is a big risk for the food problem, food security globally. Yeah, I think so.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for the question, Paulo. Diana, I saw you marked before. You have a question?
Yeah, great. Thank you. Well, yeah, it was related to something else. I've been discussing with some people at Embrapa and other organizations in Brazil about the transition to with the livestock breeders, right? To actually have meat produced in the lab and how they intend to transition. I mean, there are some talks and also not yet plans in place, but definitely there's something going on there. So I was just curious about, how does this look in the rest of Brazil? So this is mostly for probably Renato and others. These are referring to the part of Florianopolis. So it's more on this area. But of course, Brazil is a huge country, and I don't know what is the take for other big producers that have major stakes on this particular topic. So I was curious to hear more about the rest of Brazil and what is the reality, or if this is really just a big dream.
Renato?
They're quite difficult questions to answer, always. Well, I cannot talk. For transition, you have to my view, transitions, you have to deal with it in the plural. Transitions, not only one transition. There's no one. There is transitions, especially when you've got this sort of how can I say, heterogeneous society as Brazil is. People are used to think of Brazil of having these large fields of soybean, of livestock, etc. But we have, I don't know, almost around 4 million small farmers in the rural areas. And what about these people? So you've got to consider this social differentiation in terms of the rural area in the food production. So which transition you want to promote? I don't believe in transition without public policy. No way. It's not, as I said, there's not a question of having the best technique in order to transit to. Exactly, and secondly, and I finish with this. The transition must have this integrated view in order to get involved with consumers in the urban population, together with small farmers, in my case, no small farmers. As for the large farmers, as the agribusiness sector, as I said, it's not the model that I support, but if they can do less harm, the better, the best. So if they can do some soybean, sustainable soybean, large producer, etc., well, less harm. But this is not the model I support. Not a solution for me.
Good. Thank you, Renato. Thank you, Brida. And thank you, Sonyok, for sharing some insights from around the world. Thank you to the audience for your question. I think we came here, a little bit not knowing where we would go, where you'd take us, and say, well, we're in deep troubles here. But listening to you, and also I know, Rieta, you are critical against some points here and highlighting them. The key outtake is we need to do something, and definitely through dialogue and inspiring each other, we can move faster and we can move better, and putting it on the agenda politically or academic or whatever it might be will make a difference. So thank you very much. I think you can find our panelists on LinkedIn and connect with them if you have follow-up questions. And with that, I would like to hand back to Alessia, who will take us to a breakout room where we can network as farmer.
Yes.
Alessandra.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks, Christina, for your fantastic moderation, and thanks all the speakers of this session. I think the audience is really interested, and we are now moving to the breakout rooms. You have been already pre-assigned, so you are going to join the different room, I think, and now we are going to have a pop-up message, and we can continue the discussion for other 10 to 15 minutes in the breakout rooms before joining again the session. Please remember that you are free to leave one room and go into another, but please do not leave the main meeting. See you in the rooms.
I think everyone should be back by now.
Are we all back?
I think so. The rooms are closed. Yeah.
Okay. Right. So Gustavo.
So now sure. Thanks. Now we are ready for section 2 about innovation and collaboration. So good evening for the ones who follow us from Korea. Good afternoon, Europe, and good morning, everyone from Brazil. It's a great pleasure to contribute with this trilateral dialogue today. Innovation and collaboration are hot topics, even more important now to the pandemic we are still facing. And to start our session about innovation and collaboration, we have a short presentation in video about 3 amazing startups. Planted from Switzerland, Live Up from Brazil, and Nuve Labs from Korea. These startups are aligned with healthiness, a global food consumption tendency, and they also seek to contribute to a more sustainable world via sustainable new food products and food waste reduction solutions. 3 distinct businesses from 3 different cultures, but united in this purpose to offer healthy foods. Let's watch how these new enterprises are focusing in the shift to healthy and sustainable consumption patterns.
So our video has now voiceover, so I will try to do it ad hoc here. So hi, we are Planted. We were founded as an ETH spin-off in Switzerland in 2019, and we produce delicious plant-based meat in our home in Kemptal in Switzerland, of which you can see a few impressions here. We are on a mission to change the way we think about meat and kickstart the necessary transformation toward a more sustainable food system. Our specialty is the creation of a fibrous structure and texture that in its mouthfeel comes as close as possible to the animal equivalent. And we achieve this without any additives, just from pea protein, fiber, rapeseed oil, and water, making use of state-of-the-art technology. Since 2019, Planted products are available in the 2 top supermarket chains in Switzerland, as well as in our web shop and in an ever-growing number of restaurants and around the country. We have expanded to 3 more countries in the meantime, to Austria, Germany, and France. And we have saved over 2,000 tons of CO2 equivalent, or over 105 chicken lives in 2020 alone.
O mundo tem cada vez mais gente que se importa em saber de onde vem o que come, a cadeia que alimenta e o impacto do que consome. Gente que se importa em não perder tempo e que também se importa com quem cultiva o alimento. Gente que prefere os orgânicos. Gente que se orgulha de postar aquele prato incrível e que também se orgulha de reciclar e reaproveitar tudo que for possível. Gente que cultiva diversidade, no prato e na vida. Gente que se importa com a saúde, do corpo, da mente e das relações. E isso pra gente é o que mais importa. Cada um do seu jeito, todo mundo se importa em comer bem. Comida gostosa, comida natural, comida sem estresse. Boa pra gente, boa pros outros, boa pro mundo. Comida que faz bem e faz o bem. E com tudo isso que você se importa, a gente se importa também. Live Up, comida para quem se importa.
Hello, I'm Logan Kim, CEO of Nubian. Our AI food scanners save money and improve the environment. Did you know that 1/3 of the food goes to waste? If we reduce to 5% of that, we can save 8 billion malnutrition population. The greenhouse gases from the food waste is taking a big toll on Earth. Most of the food waste is from the overcooked and overordered food. NubiScan, our AI food scanner, detects the amount and the type of the food within 1 second. It makes the kitchen smart and eco-friendly. Our customer can save money from the optimizing food preparation and servings. We also analyze the personal eating habits. So far, we reduced to 140 tons and save $30 million from the analyzing big data. Our team is very specialized in AI scan technology with over 12 years of experience. Let's scan and save. Thank you.
Great. After these 3 inspiring presentations from our startups, we have a debate with 3 experts. For the audience, feel free to raise your hands or use the chat. Before that, we would like to ask you to answer this short poll. It's a short survey, simple survey with multiple choice that will help us to connect you with the startups we just had presenting here today. So let's move to our experts. Part of the game-changing solutions to foster sustainability in the agri-food chain is to promote further open innovation and international collaborations. For our discussion about innovation and collaboration, we have 3 experts based in Brazil, Switzerland, and South Korea: Florian Vitton, Gustavo Guadagnini, and Christian Schwab. To start our presentations, I would like to introduce you to Florian Vitton. Florian holds a PhD in organic chemistry from the University of Geneva. He currently holds a position of Research and Development Management Executive for Science and Technology at CJ Food in South Korea. Dr. Viton joined CJ Food early this year following a 15 years career in the Nestlé Group, where he held scientific and managerial positions at the Nestlé Research Center located in Lausanne, Switzerland. Florian, thanks for joining us today. The floor is yours.
And thanks a lot, Gustavo. Is it okay? I hope you can hear me loud and clear. So I'll start with my short presentation. So as a contribution to today's event, oh, sorry. Am I supposed to share my slides? There.
Yes, you can
Okay,
share
I
your
thought you could
slides.
share. Sorry about that.
Oh, otherwise, we have a backup if you prefer.
Yeah, let me see. Is it okay? Can you see now?
Yes.
Okay, so sorry. Okay. Yeah, so I was saying as a contribution to today's event, I'll try to give you a perspective from someone who's been working in the food industry for quite some time now on this necessary shift to healthy and sustainable food consumption patterns that we're discussing today and how collaborative efforts can accelerate this shift. So for many decades, the food industry has been focused and organized towards mass production and supply of safe and tasty and nutritious foods to people at a time where the access to food was often scarce for many. And of course, the world has changed, and in today's globalized world, resources are increasingly constrained, population further grow, and dietary related diseases become more and more prevalent. So people's expectations for foods are also tremendously changed. Consumers across the world seek food and beverage that meet all their needs. They not only desire foods that are safe and taste great, but they also want foods that are healthy and nutritious with ingredients that they recognize and more customized to their specific nutritional needs. So people are also increasingly praising foods from trusted local sources and from companies that carries social values and a clear engagement towards sustainable solutions. So obviously this paradigm shift is placing the food companies today under an incredible tension and faced with the obligation to radically and urgently adapt a food system organization which has become unsustainable, unequal, destabilizing for our planet and unadapted to people's needs today. And then actually the food science and technology plays a core role in this paradigm shift because it's an essential engine for the food industry to adapt its offering from tasty foods to sustainable nutrition. So from an holistic perspective, food science and technology allows to understand consumer perception of foods, be it from a consumer and sensory science standpoint or from the understanding of what are the key molecules in foods that are responsible for the flavor of foods and how they interact with sensory biological receptors, to the development of new food processing methods that are more efficient, enabling less or no waste, enabling new food properties, for example. And finally, this science and technology is key to the understanding of the nutrition and health impact of food products. So these different elements are intertwine and they improve iteratively. And any food companies nowadays rely more and more systematically on collaborative approaches to accelerate those iterative improvements. So let me give an example of the importance of collaborative approaches to accelerate innovations, or rather an example of how innovation can be hampered by a lack of collaboration. So this example is related to the important topic of sugar reduction in foods and beverages, a key direction for better nutrition, of course. And a few years back, Nestlé was the first company to come out with a very innovative technology that was based on material science to develop a so-called hollow sugar. That's a sugar that dissolves faster in the mouth and enhances sweetness perception. But at the more or less the same time, companies like Tet and Lai or Dux Matok were also competing with very related technologies. And products based on this hollow sugar were launched on the market with lots of publicity, but eventually they failed to make it commercially for different reasons. But clearly on such an important topic, resources and time could have been saved by joining forces to collaboratively develop more robust technologies and commercial concepts rather than competing to be first to reach the market ill-prepared. So since then, many companies have decided to collaborate much more closely in the field of sugar reduction. Nowadays, plant-based is obviously a booming area these days with regards to sustainable nutrition, and it has become really an incredible platform for collaborative efforts to develop technologies and innovative concepts that are driven by consumers' demand. So one vibrant example is the valorization of barley spent grains, which is an abundant side stream from the beer industry, stemming from the production of malt extract. And this side stream has historically been used as feed for animals, although it is an interesting material nutritionally, which is rich in proteins and fibers. And we have seen in recent years many microbreweries, consumers, and startups starting to transform this side stream into a food ingredient that can be used in many sorts of snacks. And more recently, the giant brewer AB InBev has embarked in several collaborations with universities and startups to bring to scale and commercial viability the manufacturing of new ingredients that are based on these barley spent grains. And these ingredients are now reaching the market, demonstrating that there is a potential to combine sustainability and better nutrition. And yeah, as I was saying, the plant-based field is really extremely fertile for collaborative approach, and you have here some examples as well in emphasizing the collaborations between different food companies, be it Givaudan and Buer, or Pepsi and Beyond Meat, or Corn and Rocket, developing new products together or creating a pool for more innovative ideas. And we'll also see many corporate accelerators and incubators that are sponsoring or investing in plant-based innovations and opportunities, as well as more and more non-profit platforms like the Protein X, for example, that are bringing innovators together around this very dynamic topic. So all this dense ecosystem.
Sorry, if you could go to the closing remarks because the time is running.
Yeah, so I was just concluding that the dense ecosystem here is definitively contributing to an extremely fast growth of the plant-based offering in line with consumers' demand for sustainable nutrition. And that's it for me.
Thanks a lot, Florian. Great. It seems from your presentation that the industry is getting more consumer-driven due to this public health concern, which is good. We will jump to our second speaker. Then after the three presentations, we will have the debate. Again, for the audience, feel free to raise your hand or use the chat. Questions can also be done in Portuguese or Korean. We have translators with us today. So English, Portuguese, or Korean for the questions will be fine. Our second speaker is a smart young professional based in São Paulo, Gustavo Guadagnini. Thanks, Gustavo, for joining us today. Gustavo is a business administrator and serves as the managing director of the Good Food Institute in Brazil. He's one of the most active advocates for the food sector, which has led him to lecture at several major companies, universities, innovation centers, and projects like TEDx. He has also had the opportunity to collaborate with several media outlets through interviews and comments. Gustavo, the floor is yours. Thanks again.
You're on mute. You're muted, Gustavo.
Sorry, can you see my screen?
Yes, it's fine.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. So in Portuguese, we say when two people have the same name, they are charas. That's me and Gustavo Pertino in here. Thank you very much. So I'm the managing director of GFI Brazil. And GFI is a nonprofit that is here to develop the alternative protein sector. I'm very happy to see that we have a couple of people talking about plant-based, and this is being considered an important trend. We believe in that, and in order to advance this area, we have 3 programs that are science and technology. As I said in the breakout rooms, I really believe that we need to be investing in science in order to get where we want in the food waste and in the food production, corporate engagement, and policy. So we are trying to work with all the areas and the sectors of society in order to develop the alternative protein sector. And we have units in the United States, Brazil, India, Europe, Asia Pacific, and Israel. 100 more staff in these 6 regions. So the problem that we are approaching in GFI is how we are raising animals to make food. It's an interesting, different perspective of instead of only dealing with the waste that we have in the final products or in people's homes, we are also thinking on the production chain and how the technology is to produce the foods that we need to eat. We need to feed almost 10 billion people by 2050 in a way that is sustainable, right? Because industrialized animal agriculture is today one of the top 2 or 3 most significant contributors to the world's pressing environmental issues. And we also need to produce this food in a way that is very efficient. And when I talk about efficient of food, today we are raising grains, we are making like soy or beans to give to the animals. It takes 90 calories of food to feed a chicken in order to produce 1 calorie of meat. This is 90% of the waste of the calories produced by the entire food system. So today we have a large portion of the land of the world producing just a small portion of the actual food, the actual calories that we are eating. And also we need to think on how the production system of the future will be safe. Today, a lot of antibiotics are using to produce animals, and we are having a bunch of infectious disease like pig flu and chicken flu and even the COVID that are directly related to the way that we are producing and we are eating animals. But besides, we have this, although we have this problem of producing meat, we know that demand for meat is growing. By 2050, the world's population is going to grow 30%, but the demand for poultry is increasing 120%. So we understand that food is the most cultural things that exist. People want to eat the food that is cultural for them. They want to replicate the recipes that their families had. They want to eat something that is traditional for their own countries and from their own places of living. So GFI's approach to this problem, you know, the challenge of the food is exactly trying to change the technology. Instead of, for instance, trying to convince the whole 10 billion people of the world to be vegetarians, we just want to deliver the same food people are already used to eat, but produce this food in a new way. We want to change the technology behind the food instead of changing the food habits. That is a much harder effort. And our idea is to create food that have the same characteristics that all the foods that people already like to eat. They are affordable, accessible, but they are also produced in a way that is much more sustainable and efficient. So this is my last slide in here. The thing that we want to do is make something people want. We are trying to stimulate these 3 technologies. One of them is plant-based. So something like we saw in the planted presentation before, the idea of using plants to produce food that looks like meat and tastes like meat and have the same texture. The second technology that we support is cultivated meat, something that is happening already. It is very impressive that is already happening, right? We can actually take a cell from an animal and make meat from this cell. The first country to sell this kind of meat is Singapore. So if you go to Singapore now, you can order cultivated meat even from your cell phone to be delivered in your home. And we are going to see this technology being spread to the whole world in the next 10 years or so. And also we believe there is a lot of potential in technologies that are related to fermentation to produce high quality ingredients and even high quality proteins. So these are the 3 technologies that we support, and we support, as I mentioned, in science, corporate engagement, and all the policy and public relations work. I will leave here my contacts and just want to say that I'm very interested to connect with everyone that is in here and interested in the alternative protein sector. I truly believe that alternative protein is a way of delivering what we want to eat in a way that is more sustainable, in a way that we won't hurt the world and we want to create new infectious diseases and we want to collaborate with the food scarcity that is happening across the globe. So I encourage everyone that wants to connect to this sector to just send me a message or add me here as a contact, and I'll be happy to collaborate with you all.
Thanks a lot, Gustavo. I must say that there is an avenue of opportunities related to the use of biodiversity to come up with new food products and new alternative proteins. I'm aware that GFI has a research grant for this line of research here in Brazil. Embrapa is connected to it, and it's great to have you here today. Last but not least, we have our third speaker, Christian Schwab. Thanks for joining us, Christian. Christian holds the position of Executive Director of the Food and Nutrition Center at EPFL. Previously, he had a very diverse career as senior leader in large multinationals such as Tetra Pak, Nestlé, and Firmenich. Since February 2020, Christian is also the president of the Executive Committee of the Swiss Food and Nutrition Valley. Thanks again, Christian. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you for this nice introduction. Today, since the topic of the day is collaboration, I wanted to cover an aspect that I believe is not discussed enough. We all call for systemic innovation, and I will explain what I think of the need for stewardship. We heard already today a great number of terrible numbers on the impact and the magnitude of the challenges that are related to the food systems, ranging from carbon emissions to water consumptions to biodiversity loss to world hunger to malnutrition on the other end to soil impoverishment. And we also know that if we don't change anything, just to accompany the demographic evolution and purchase power, we will need to produce 60% more by 2050. So if there is any consensus, we need radical change. We also know some element of solutions. I will not go into the details, but solutions from plant-based protein that were discussed a lot already today, to regenerative agriculture, development of healthier and more respectful food options, digitalization of the food systems, precision farming to reduce chemical entrance, and so forth. So we have identified quite a number of opportunities to improve things. I am not sure when I say we, I really mean all of us, the world, the public at large, politicians, journalists, and so forth, the full magnitude of the challenge. If you think of it, in the past 2 years, we've evolved a lot in understanding the importance of the food challenge and the ramifications that they have. Do we fully measure yet the complexity of the challenge, or at least do the decision makers fully measure the complexity of the challenges? How are we setting the right level of ambition? What I mean by that is, take agriculture. Is it enough to reduce the harm we are doing to the soils through impoverishment? Or do we need to stabilize to go to a zero situation? Or do we need to go to regenerative agriculture already? So where do we set the bar in terms of levels of ambition? Normally you say you want to walk before you run. Do we have time for that? Do we have a good measurement of the resilience of the current food systems? Mr. Gutierrez from the United Nations said that we were, due to the COVID, we're going ahead of the single biggest food crisis in human history. We don't really measure it yet. I don't think we've fully measured yet the impact of it and the resilience towards facing some crisis. What will be the resistance to radical transformation? Be it the cultural element that was mentioned, there will be a strong cultural resistance, whether there is some interest groups that have possibly no much interest, economical interest in changing the current paradigms. What about accelerating prescriptive regulations? We keep saying there's a lack of political will, and I certainly share this reading. Yet, I personally believe we will be surprised soon by how politicians will suddenly start to vote on very prescriptive and constraining regulations as a reaction to the system to secure their next election. Things on ban on plastic packages that we already see in some African countries, for instance, single-use packaging and plastic. Or in Switzerland, we are about to vote on the 13th of June about a potential complete ban of chemical entrants for agriculture. If that happens, are we ready for that? So last but not least, as new regulation come in, as new standards are being established, think reusable packaging, God knows, the nature of the competitive advantage of the private players, in particular, the CPG companies, possibly will have to evolve. So I don't think we fully measure things. But if there is one consensus, is the fact that we need radical innovation. And when we mean radical, we often use this word, we need it to be disruptive, transformational, transdisciplinary, inclusive, global, right? Here we are, Brazil, South Korea, and Switzerland trying to ask how we could collaborate, and it has to be systemic. But frankly, those are nice buzzwords. But ask yourself, when is the last time you saw such a systemic innovation in the food system take root? And I think, and that's only talking about the technological aspect of it. But as Roberto reminded us, technology is only one part. You also need the right regulatory environment, a more conducive regulatory environment and incentives. You need educational programs, you need investment in infrastructures, you need the financiers and donors to adjust their metrics to see how they allocate capital and so forth. So as you see, there's a lot of stars that need to align to address big systemic problems, such as what will be an alternative to single-use plastic, how to fight obesity. Not a single country in the world has succeeded in curbing obesity or other non-communicable diseases. Decarbonation of agriculture, reducing food waste and loss. Those are complex things. When is the last time we saw such a transformative innovation take root? And I personally believe, because there's one word, one dimension, one ingredient that is grossly neglected, the element of stewardship. You need someone in the system, in the food system, to mobilize, federate, energize a very diverse set of actors, complementary actors behind a shared project, if not a shared vision, a vision that transcends individual interest. So my call for action to everyone listening today, whether you're a donor, whether you're academia, whether you're private sector, is do rally behind or around people that are volunteering to provide such a stewardship behind bold and hairy projects, transformative projects, and be willing to finance this contribution. Today, I work in academia, I know that firsthand. We're very happy to finance disciplinary excellence. We're not willing to finance this stewardship element because it's too fluffy, and yet it is critical. To conclude on a positive note, I do believe that if we can mobilize, acknowledge, and pay for these elements of stewardship, we will be able to effectively and efficiently mobilize all the common imagination and common creativity we have, and unleash changes that we can probably not even fathom today. So thank you for your attention. That was my contribution.
Thanks a lot, Christian. We see that two words are very present today in our dialogue, such as innovation and resiliency, and a lot of topics such as stewardship are connected also to these two words I mentioned. And it's very important for us to think about stewardship because it connects to the importance of the governance, to look at the governance of the food system. So thanks, Christian. We had this short survey with the audience earlier today, which was very interesting. And we would like now to share the results of it. The first question was did you identify any possible connection for the startups in the videos in your local network? 42% said not yet, but I see good potential, which is good. We see that this connection can be fostered after this dialogue, which is also an objective of this dialogue. And 31% said, yes, I have someone in mind. So feel free to connect with among you using the chat. And we will now move to a debate with the three speakers. And again, questions can be done in Portuguese, English, or Korean. You can raise your hands, or you can also use the chat, and I will read the question in the chat for our speakers. To warm up the debate, I would like to start with a general question for the three speakers. And it will be something like how to foster collaboration and innovation involving institutions from distinct continents and cultures such as Brazil, Switzerland, and Korea. Florian, Gustavo, and Christian, feel free to speak. I'm not sure if Florian would like to start. Then we move to Gustavo and Christian.
Yeah, I can start with a few words. Might speak a little bit more of Singapore and Korea in this sense, but I guess beyond the particular needs of institutions or companies to collaborate on specific challenges, for me, what is really important is the political willingness of governments to remove some barriers, to provide strategic incentives that eventually create and sustain a rich innovation ecosystem. And that I see really critical. So in Asia, Singapore is certainly one of the highlights of this political willingness. They have managed to attract many food companies, suppliers, startups, academics, investment funds in Singapore. And there is a very vibrant ecosystem which links Singapore to the rest of the world and foster more collaborations because the members of this ecosystem are, of course, having often a global presence. So I think this willingness is strongly important to push for this type of collaborations. In Korea, I cannot really speak for now. I'm quite new here. I don't see the same push here that I've seen in other areas, I would say.
Before moving to our second speaker, I would like to highlight that our 3 startups, Planted from Switzerland, Live Up from Brazil, and Nuvolabs from Korea, are more than welcome to join this debate. Feel free also to raise your hands or speak about the topics we are discussing.
So in my answer, I will refer back to the 3 areas of GFI, the 3 programs that I think this is how I think in collaboration. In order to advance any kind of solution, we need to involve these 3 sectors. First, in academia. So the first thing that I would say, I really think that one of the most important things that anyone can do and any collaboration agreements between countries can do is to fund science and to create a strong scientific network between those different countries and these different institutions that could collaborate and develop open access scientific groundbreaking research. There is a second part of the collaboration that has to happen in the private sector, so companies and startups. So I see like Planted here, and their technology could be very well accepted in Brazil. I will be very happy to talk to them later. And I really think there is good technology, good ideas coming up in different parts of the world, and those could be exchanged in order to advance the whole world faster. And in the final part, the public policy is very important. So in today's market, someone mentioned before how we are, I think it was Mr. Renato, how we are connected in the food system and different countries are involved in this global trade of food. So in order to develop this new solution, we need to have it then regulated and approved in different countries and in different regions. So the public policy also has to advance, and there's a lot of possibilities of collaboration under this.
Thanks, Gustavo. Christian, would you like to add a few words?
Yeah, with pleasure. I see 2 levels of innovation and collaboration. You have some element of bilateral collaborations, and academia will do that a lot. When a lab in Switzerland collaborates with a lab in Korea, that happens is part of the DNA of our institutions, and more communication on our respective capabilities can only help increasing that. The bigger challenge for me is when you talk about systemic innovation. Here I see 2 key ingredients that will be required for that to materialize. One is a clear definition of the problem we are trying to solve. To ask for collaboration is fine, but to solve what? Because only once you have defined that clearly, you can assess what are the complementary competencies required, and in the light of that, what is the complementarity between the 3 countries, like the 3 around the table today. And then you need the political will. You need, through funding of research and stewardship, clear incentives for the dedicated specialists to come out of their holes and to volunteer to collaborate.
Sure. I believe political will is a transversal axis that is really important in our discussion today. When it comes to startups, I would like to ask this question for the startups we have with us today. In relation to angel investors, here in Brazil, for instance, I believe one challenge is to connect more entrepreneurs and angel investors. And I would like to know from them how they evaluate the scenario today, this connection between entrepreneurs, angel investors, what they think it could be done to foster this connection between entrepreneurs and angel investors. Anyone from the startups would like to make a comment?
I can go ahead. So I think as of now, we see a very strong movement towards investment on food and agricultural sector. So we've seen in 2020, 2021, a lot of investors and either angel investors, private equity, venture capitalists are focusing on food solutions and food startups. And also you see a very strong movement towards ESG startups or ESG oriented startups that not only solve an economic problem, not only generates profit, but also solves a social problem. So I think a big way to connect those players is how can the startups actually evaluate their impact and evaluate their transformation within the food system and how they can communicate that, right? It's just what Christian was saying, we need systemic innovation within the food systems. So I think if people can communicate that clearly, then more and more investment will be driven within these startups.
That's a good point, Pedro. When it comes to communication, I have another question for the startups in general, and feel free any startup to answer, is how do you work on raising the awareness of your network and potential customers? I imagine that the success of your business strongly depends on the social reaction to your offers, which links to the education of people. So how do you do? You can start, and then the other startups, again, feel free to make comments.
Right. So LiveUp has a very strong consumer-centered approach. So basically, when we talk about collaboration, we think about collaboration within our food system, within our value chain. And we have three main stakeholders on the food system, right? So the food grower, the food cooker, and the food eater. And we believe the food eater is the most important player because he's the one who decides what we're going to eat and what we're going to produce. So basically what we do, we have a lot of we have our own platform to gather data from the consumer. So what they would like to eat, what they would like to change if they add one product to the cart and if they added this same product on the next day. And we take this data and then we share with our suppliers in order to level our demand and our supply. And then we can connect the food system as a whole. So I think focusing on the consumer and understanding what they need is one of the key aspects in order to make this systemic innovation.
Thanks a lot, Pedro. Any further comments from maybe from Novi Labs, from Planted, from Switzerland?
Yes, I think we have, yeah. I think at Planted we really have, you know, we have the advantage that much of our consumers really care about sustainability, and that we, you know, like by now it's kind of a well-known fact that this plant-based solutions, that they are or can at least be part of the solution of the resources that the livestock sector still uses up, and that we need to move more into this plant-based or move toward more plant-based protein. What we are trying to do, because we ultimately want to reach the broad public, right? So I think Gustavo mentioned something similar. So we're not looking to transform a lot of people into vegetarians, which of course is great if that happens, but we also basically want to reach everyone, so they very easily, without changing their whole diet, can adopt more plant-based protein. And for that, on the one side, we communicate directly with our customers on our different communications channels, and we communicate on our product footprint. and how it relates to an animal product. And then I think a very nice approach, which goes a bit into the education sector we talked about as well already today, is that we at our production site, we actually build it in a way that the whole production is enclosed in a glass house, so that actually people can come visit us here and see how their food is produced. And so yeah, Corona permitting, we will start to receive more visitors here, and I think this is a really nice opportunity as well to get closer again to the food we are eating.
Thanks, Larina. It's important to add that not only the vegetarian market is increasing, but also the flexitarian market, even here in Brazil, Argentina, the land of churrasco. And so if Noob Labs wants to add some comments, they are more than welcome as well. All right. We can move to our debate with our speakers. Florian, I would have a question specifically to you. For me, it seems that the shift to healthy and sustainable consumption patterns is fostering entrepreneurship aligned with healthy food businesses. At the same time, it seems to be a niche market, since the great majority of consumers in the developing world do not have the purchase power to buy healthy food products. How do you evaluate the market for healthy food products in the next 10 years, taking into account the diversity of the consumer market?
Yeah, not an easy question, but with no doubt, this paradigm shifting in consumers' demand for sustainable nutrition is really creating a real burst of innovations, be it from academia, startup, or large companies from the food sector and beyond. And we discussed plant-based in large already. But obviously, the strength of these trends for healthier foods isn't equal around the world, and we've discussed that as well. It is very much affected by the specific socioeconomic, cultural context of consumers worldwide. But nevertheless, I've seen the same desire of consumers for healthier foods in different parts of the world. I also feel that the sustainability concern is growing everywhere, especially because consumers of low incomes, or in developing countries, that are often the most affected by the consequences of unhealthy and unsustainable consumption patterns. And if we look back at the past, I think the food industry has been very strong at bringing to a very large base of consumers innovations that were first developed from a niche market, but gradually upscaled and priced down to reach mass markets. So in this sense, I'm quite confident that the market for healthier, more sustainable food products will continue to develop in the years to come, with many challenges. And as Renato strongly and rightly pointed earlier.
That's great. Thanks, Florian. Gustavo, now I would like to hear from you. How do you evaluate the market for alternative protein in the next 10 years? For instance, do you believe consumers will be less resistant to buy cultivated meat, for instance?
Thank you, Gustavo. So I'm suspicious to talk about this, but I believe that this market is going to be one of the most important things happening in the food system on the next decade. So we are having great consumer feedback from the plant-based products, and as they get more technology and better on taste and texture, consumers are really adopting. One of the trends that you already mentioned was the flexitarians. So we are seeing that people that are not vegetarians, that are not vegan, they are eating this kind of product. And this is plant meat for meat lovers, right? So in the next decades, we expect these markets to grow to multi-billion-dollar markets, and there are predictions that they are going to be worth more than 100 or maybe 300 billion dollars itself. And even some predictions that the cultivated meat market can be even bigger than that. Cultivated meat is a new idea, and of course, there is going to be some resistance from some consumers in the beginning, but also we are seeing this in research and consumer research, that when consumers start to consider everything that is related to the production, so the fact that they are going to eat a meat that was not made in the traditional way, okay, but also this new meat doesn't have antibiotics, doesn't have medicine, doesn't have any kind of hormones, so contaminations, so you can eat exactly the same product, maybe made in a way that it's much cleaner and more efficient. So we really believe that the consumers are going to adopt this new technology, and consumer research is pointing in a very positive direction. So I would say there are predictions that this will be 10% of the market in a couple of decades, and are other predictions that say that this is going to be more than half of the market in the total meat market in the next couple decades. So of course, there is a lot of uncertainty around it, and it depends on how the technology is going to be in the end. But the perspective is great, and probably is going to be a big deal in the close future.
That's great. It's a strong case of consumer-driven innovation. It might be the case that the flexitarians will be the ones who will push this stronger demand. I see that Juliana raised the hand. Juliana, please, you are more than welcome to make a comment or a question to our speakers before we move to our third speaker question.
Bom dia, eu vou falar em português. A minha preocupação é assim, que eu gostaria de fazer um comentário, é que essa criação de novos produtos são realmente muito importantes, mas a grande preocupação é como vamos conscientizar as pessoas para estarem consumindo isso, frente às questões culturais, às questões de hábitos. Então, quais seriam essas estratégias aí para trabalhar com essa educação alimentar, com essa mudança, né? Principalmente envolvendo aí a cultura alimentar dessas pessoas, para estarem fazendo essa substituição da carne animal para a carne vegetal, por exemplo. Obrigada.
Thanks, Juliana. So Juliana made a comment about the need to implement strategies to change food consumption habits. So how to further work with consumers in order for them to accept more, for instance, plant-based products. Gustavo, Florian, or Christian would like to make a comment?
If I can just start over this, I would say that this is certainly very important. And our approach in here, so I will not decrease the importance of education, but I would say the most effective way is to decrease the need of education. If you have to change completely the consumer habits and the consumer ideas about foods and the consumer ways of eating this food, the chances of doing this in a large scale over all the 10 billion of people starts to decrease. So the more that we can create technology solutions that look a lot like what people are already used to eat, and you create solutions that we call in the industry no-brainer. So it's a more efficient solution, it's more sustainable, it's delicious, and you can use in the exact same way that you already use the foods that you are eating today. This is the best case scenario. So even these new technologies, they come with the need to educate the consumers, but I would say there is an effort to decrease this need. You know, we are going to talk about these new technologies, but maybe the solution that is going to be implemented in the large scale cannot pass through the need of changing completely the consumer habits.
I agree, Gustavo. Thanks. Christian, Dr. Christian, I would have a final question for you. Since you are representing also an educational institution, I would like to hear from you. What's the role of academia in the triple helix model of innovation, involving the collaboration between public and private universities, government agencies, and industries?
Well, we are one of the tip of the triangle, so obviously we need to be ready and have the right interface for that. I think the academia has several roles. One is to indeed have the structure in place in terms of technology transfer, in terms of legal capabilities to accommodate joint research programs. It has to educate its children, its students, sorry, in terms of content, be willing to put the fish on the table and to present the issues, even the technology school, talk about nutrition, talk about social dimensions. I also believe academia has a big role to take a more conspicuous role in public debate. We know that the big topics are normally left to politicians, if not populist people, to argue at a very emotional and politically driven level. Whereas scientists who are normally very humble because they measure what they don't know, because they know things are pluricausal, so the solutions will be complex, they tend to take a step back and leave the debates to emotion. So I think that needs to change. Scientists have to come to the fore and bring back discussions on a fact-based level so that policies are science-based. But if you allow me to comment briefly on the topic of changing consumer habits, if you look at it from an anthropological point of view, you need 3 ingredients for behaviors to change. You need awareness for the need to change, and that is about education, political will, and so forth. You need attractive alternatives, and I think that's where cultured meat or plant-based alternatives are extremely promising. If you wanted to be a vegetarian 3 years ago, you had to be very brave because it was tofu and tofu and tofu, and it is not very sexy. Now the choice is fantastic. So, and this is only the first generation. It will keep evolving in terms of health profile and so forth. And sometimes you need skills to move to the next one. One last comment is we should not underestimate the element of marketing, because we say food is a cultural thing. And I'm the first one to acknowledge that. Yet, see how many brands became global, because marketing could overcome the cultural dimension. So we have to be careful to distinguish the dynamic in the West, where we talk about these fancy plant-based alternatives, and the dynamics in emerging markets where with purchase power, people move towards more and more meat. And we know global meat consumption is going up as we speak because of this, the inspirational element of food. There's a cultural dimension. There could be a marketing problem somewhere in the system as well.
Thanks, Christian. We perceive in this dialogue that marketing is going through a shift. Usually marketing was targeted to sell in abundance, and now we see more marketing connected to social needs, willing really to understand more the consumer needs in order to develop more healthy food products, for instance, which is great. And also, on the other hand, here in Brazil and all over the world, we see much more disconnection between public and private research-intense firms with entrepreneurships and with investors in several innovation challenges. I believe Netherlands has done this really well. For instance, Wageningen University does also applied research, and we see this movement also here in Latin America, which is important also to foster this shift to healthy, to a healthier food system. I see that Julia has made a question here in the chat. She wants to know from our speakers how to connect smallholder farmers to consumers at scales. This is a very important issue here in Brazil. The majority of the agriculture production in Brazil comes from smallholders farmers. We have seen an important connections during the pandemic based on IT solutions, and I would like to hear from you other strategies to foster this connection between smallholders, farmers, and consumers.
I can take this one. Sorry. So at Live Up, we have implemented a system where more than 70% of all our vegetables come from smallholder farmers. And basically what we do, we have the technology to see what our consumers wants to have and what are the consumer habits. So we know how many tons of carrots or onions or tomatoes we are having for the next like 12 months. And then we go to the farmers and then we share our demand forecast and implement, we guarantee the purchase of this 1 ton of vegetables for a certain price, for a fixed price. And then we give free technical support from agronomists and agroecologists to them. So they know how much they should plant, how much they should grow. and how much they would get from it. So we guarantee the income from them. So they do not need to worry with the commercialization of the food production, but with the food production itself. So I think the way to connect the smallholder farmers to consumers at scale is to shorten the supply chain and try to have the smallholder producing and connecting this food directly with the consumers through one or maximum two companies in between. And we have seen very good results from them. Last month we had over 100 tons of organic vegetables coming to our kitchen and to our meals directly from these partnerships.
This is great, Pedro, especially here in Brazil. When we talk about Brazil, we are in fact talking about a continent. So to foster shorter food chains in Brazil is a challenge, and it's really important. And we see great initiatives taking place in several Brazilian capitals, also with the green belts surrounding some cities such as Rio and São Paulo, and there's IT-based connections between smallholders and consumers that I think will be even stronger after the pandemic. Thanks again. I see that Diana Lopez, feel free to make a question, to talk, or to write your question at the chat.
Great, thank you so much. So as I mentioned before, I work in Wageningen, and specifically in the Knowledge, Technology, and Innovation Group. So clearly this is something very interesting for me. I just wanted to go back to what Gustavo was saying about the best case scenario, which is amazing, right? And there are a lot of exercises to envision what is the best case. But I think I believe in, creative destruction as well, because that's where the best thing comes up. So what will be the worst case scenario? And maybe if we not only think about what's the best, but also what's the worst, maybe that will also allow us to think of better ways to connecting what we already have. So Gustavo already partially addressed that, but I'm curious to hear, especially from Christian, but also from Pedro, because you come from very different areas of expertise, cultural backgrounds, and also your ages are different, right? So I'm just very curious to what will be the worst case scenario should the technologies that have been offered fail. And I'm also coming from the CGIAR. I work with the leaders of the Green Revolution, that actually push for this technology-oriented focus. And it is also partly because of that only focusing technology that we're facing the problems right now. That's why we're here today. So I'm really looking forward to, especially Pedro and Christian. Thank you.
Pedro, you go first.
All right. So thinking about the worst case scenario, so I think for the systemic innovation and food system change to happen, we need mainly two components. Like food has to be delicious and it has to be affordable. So I think the worst case scenario is that we fail on these two variables. So either if we make a lot of plant-based alternatives, just like tofu, just like you were saying, Gustavo, that it's not, well, tofu can be really delicious, but I mean, if we don't offer the things that people want, and if we don't offer people the things that people want at an affordable price, because if we fail, like if people see more value on buying unhealthy food or buying fast food or even buying meat, and instead of buying healthy alternatives or plant-based alternatives, then the market won't change. I think when the question is about how to finance such transformation, is about the people who are deciding what to eat make the right decision, right? Like we eat 3 times a day for 365 years. Like no one goes without eating for a couple of days at least. So we make 1,000 decisions a year of what we are eating. And if you can afford to make this decision, then we can change the market. If you cannot afford, then you're in a different situation. You need social assistance, you need political policies. But if you can afford, then you need to make the right question. So I think the worst case scenario is that we fail to make it delicious and then we fail to make it affordable.
Thank you for taking the lead, Pedro. It gave me a bit more time to answer, to think, because this is a tricky question. Well, thank you, Julia. I think for me, the worst case scenario is a massive explosion of inequalities. Meaning, if we will stay on the current status quo, with climate warming accelerating, with a negative impact on food, compounding with the fact of soil impoverishment. You probably heard the number that according to the FAO, we still have 60 harvests left. And then this is it. This is finito della commedia. The soil, by and large, in average, will be depleted. If that scenario was to happen, that means food shortage. Now, who will have the price will go up, and who will be able to afford food is the rich countries. So what we heard today about the paradox of Brazil, which is producing more than ever and then suffering food insecurity more than ever, will probably multiply across a big part of the global south, where people producing food will not be able to afford it, and the rich countries will be able to last a little bit longer. So that means for me an explosion of inequalities with all the political unrest that will come with it. I don't know if that answers the question, but that to me is the gloom and doom scenario.
Thank you to both. Thank you.
Thanks. Olivier has an interesting question as well. He inserted here in the chat. It's about animal-based versus plant-based. Did we reach price parity yet? And can plant-based become even more affordable than meat? What do you think, Gustavo? My xará, Gustavo.
I would say no, we have not reached price parity yet. We have in some kinds of products, in some categories, and comparing specific products with one another. But when we think in the whole production chain and the whole availability of animal foods, especially in countries like Brazil, where we have very cheap animal products being available in the market, we are not in the price parity yet. Although we are actually moving in a fast direction, in this direction in a very fast way. So I would say there is potential to reach the price parity, and there is potential to be even more affordable than the traditional meat, especially if we think that today we are getting producing vegetables to get to the animals and then eat the animal. So we could just eat the vegetables and would be cheaper and much more efficient. So in the correct scale and using the correct technologies, there is space to be even more affordable than meat.
Great, Gustavo. Folks, this is a really rich debate, but I'm sorry to say that we are running out of time. It was an amazing discussion we had here today. I'm sure this dialogue will have a rich final report. Just to finish, one concept I really like to learn today and mentioned by Florian was proactive nutrition. It makes me to remember about the power consumers have, we consumers, to influence this shift to healthy and sustainable consumption patterns. And as I mentioned, also in a brief comment, I believe that marketing is getting more connected to the social needs, and all this transformation comes for the well-being of society as a whole. That's what we are all trying to foster with this debate. Thanks again a lot, and Alessandro and Leonardo, now the floor is yours for the closing remarks. It was a great pleasure to join you guys today.
Thanks a lot, Gustavo. So I'd like to start, first of all, thanking you and Christina for the excellent work. Obviously, it's not just about today, but the moderators and the speakers had to engage for this event for a long time. So I really thank them for their time and dedication. That was really wonderful. And it's thanks to people like you that these events can happen. I did all this, the two sessions brought us through different topics. We talk about a multi-scale approach, about specifically on sustainable and healthy food. We talk about national initiatives. We involved anyway foreigner talents in Switzerland, and we also passed by an international organization like the World Food Program, which is concretely creating interesting programs in cooperation with companies and startups in Korea, and everything which has been done here can be exported to other countries. And to me, I find really interesting the fact that Korea has said, it was a country that 40 years ago was the one receiving the funding, and now is one of the main provider of funding. So this is a really important message. And then I also think that what we saw with the startups reflects also the strengths of the three countries, the attention that Switzerland has on sustainability, and so this transition also to the alternative food, the relation with the consumers, and everything which Pedro talked about in Brazil, and the technology oriented that Korea shows to be as a country with the AI system to avoid the food waste. And again, with the experts, we pass through the open innovation model, the alternative proteins, and also something that is really a takeaway, the message from Christian. We speak about many things and many big words, but then we need someone which brings all this together and can coordinate and make it possible. Otherwise, those stay as words. So it was really a pleasure, and it was really fruitful. We will also work on a report about this event, which is also due to the UN Food System Summit, and we will share with all of you. With this, I pass the word to Leonardo for the real closing, and thanks you again.
Thank you, Alessandra. You didn't left pretty much for me to summarize. Thanks for the summary of this session. I learned a lot. I'm not an expert on food systems. I learned a lot. Also got at sometimes a little bit very concerned about the ways we're dealing with our food systems, and as Christian said, we need a disruptive approach. We need a global approach, and it's not going to be easy. But I also see that some initiatives here are like composing a bigger and a broader way of approaching the problems we have, the challenges we have. We know the challenges, and we have some ideas. I think that's the main that I'm going to bring and to keep and to learn from the sessions. As Alessandra said, we are going to produce a report. This is an event that is organized within the United Nations Food System Summit. So we are going to report, we're going to share this report not only with the summit, but also we're going to produce a report that we are going to share with you as soon as possible. And thank you very much. Thank to our speakers. A big thank you for your commitment, for your time, and also for our guests. Please stay tuned for the next events of the Swiss Snacks Network. And we hope to be working together with our colleagues from Seoul. Thanks, Alessandra. Thanks to the team. And I hope you enjoy your night, your evenings. And we still have a day, full day of work in Brazil here. Thanks a lot. Thanks for attending the meeting.